We're good. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Daily Daryl. We like to call these discussions with Daryl. And today I am very pleased to bring in my guest, Dr. Michael Travis of Total Health Chiropractic in Benton, Kentucky. Before we get to Dr. Travis, I just want to tell you guys, go ahead and watch it on Facebook Live. Send us any questions you might have for the doctor. Send us any questions you might have for me, and we'll do our best to get those answered during our broadcast. So I know we're on live now, so I wanted to make this as interactive as we can. For now, I'll be asking the questions, but every time I'll look at my phone from time to time, and I'll be able to ask the doctor some of your questions. Again, it's Dr. Michael Travis out of Benton, Kentucky, and the owner, entrepreneur, chiropractor at Total Health Chiropractic. So without any further ado, welcome, Dr. Travis.
Hey, Daryl. Good to see you today.
How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good, buddy. I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here hanging out with you today.
All right, man. Hey, want to tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about your history. So, how did you get started in chiropractic?
It was actually a pretty funny start. When I graduated from college, I went to work in the pharmaceutical industry. I was actually working for Schering-Plough for a couple of years. And what I began to notice within that industry is that there were so many people that were just stuck. They basically have a problem. They go to their medical doctor, and traditionally the medical doctor puts them on a pill or gives them a surgery. And you and I both know that the answer to health problems, to actually truly get in health, is not going to come in the form of a pill or a surgery. And what I witnessed there really pushed me into chiropractic school, and that's why I wanted to be, somebody that was firsthand really helping people to get better and to get just improvement in their lives, basically.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because I'm not going to say I was always like that, but I know at least in the last 10 to 20 years that one of the most important things to me that I value is my health. And so,
absolutely.
I try to do a diet that's rich in green vegetables. I try to take as few medications as I possibly can. And I know that's a lot of the same things. So could you tell us maybe what your preferences and your endorsements are?
Well, I think you've got to start with the question of what is health, and health is actually more than just feeling good, because you and I both know that right now, we know people that have felt good, but then all of a sudden they've come in with cancer, or they've ended up with diabetes and things like that. So really the true definition of health is a social, emotional, and physical well-being. So when you look at health, you want to think, is my body functioning and healing at 100%? And that's one of the things that got me so excited about chiropractic is if you think about where health really comes from, our bodies, they have this master control system, and we call that the brain and the nervous system. So the brain is the thing, for your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for even just a simple cut just to heal on your arm. You've got to have a signal that comes down from your brain and tells everything in your body what to do. And really, the only reason that we've got a spine in the first place is that just surrounds and protects the nervous system. So when things get out of alignment, man, not only does it cause us to feel bad, but it can actually cause dysfunction in our body over time as well. So, my job is basically, really simple. People come in, they want to feel better, and a side effect of getting rid of their pain is not only do they feel better, but now, I've had people come in that their stomach problems may start to go away, or, people that have been constipated. I know I had a lady that just came in recently. She'd been constipated for 10 years, hadn't been able to go to the bathroom. And, she came in, and the next day she's like, hey, man, You ain't gonna believe what happened to me when I got home yesterday. I thought she was gonna have to buy stock in the Charmin company or something, Daryl. So it's just cool stuff like that, man. We just start working with the body, and we help the body improve its ability to function. Is really what I do is about, basically. So um, that's a good question.
Well, I think the whole central nervous system is very fascinating. Uh, I will not pretend that I know near as much about it as you, but I think I know that's it's like I guess what you said. The brain is the control center. So what? How does this? Let's talk more about the central nervous system and how
Sure.
that affects what we do and how we feel and just overall health and well-being.
Absolutely. Well, your nervous system is actually divided into two systems, and the first system is called your sympathetic system, and that, in short for that, they call that the fight or flight system. That's where if you and I are hanging out in a room, and all of a sudden a tiger comes jumping into the room, our heart rate's elevated, our pupils dilate. When we're in that kind of, we gotta defend ourselves. But then there's also a flip side of that system that's called your parasympathetic system. And a lot of time what happens is, and let me actually explain the parasympathetic. What that means is the body, that's called the rest and digest system. So what we run into a lot in our society today is, as you and I both know, that everybody is just so busy. We've got so much on our plate, and we're constantly running. And most people, what we find is they're stuck in sympathetic mode, meaning that their cortisol levels are high. They're experiencing a lot of fatigue. People can't sleep at night. And what I actually am able to do as a chiropractor, which is really cool, is, for instance, when I have people that come in that are stuck in this sympathetic mode, a lot of times when the bones shift out of place, they put pressure on the central nervous system, which lowers something called the threshold of the system. It's kind of like an electrical system where all of a sudden it increases the amount of firing that's starting to occur in the system. What we actually do as chiropractors that's so cool is when we start adjusting the spine, it's like hitting a reset button on your nervous system. So not only, again, do people come in, most people come in with neck pain or headaches, but what we find is they'll come in and we'll start adjusting them. And then now they come in, they say, Doc, I'm sleeping better at night. I'm waking up and I'm actually feeling like I'm rested, or just like the lady, that she was able to start having bowel movements again. So really cool stuff, man. The nervous system's it's a pretty cool system, actually.
Doc, it's funny that you should mention sleeping because I've gone 2 nights with almost zero sleep. I've been babysitting my nieces for my sister and brother-in-law. They've been out of town, and we chose to do it at their house, and I haven't slept a wink. So what's going on there? I mean, maybe if you could just give it could help many more people than me. Where does insomnia come from?
Well, there's a couple of things actually. When you're looking at good sleep, our body has what's called a circadian rhythm, and those are kind of our natural up and down rhythms throughout the day. And one thing that a lot of people run into is that we need to go to bed at the same time every night in order to get optimal function the next day.
Sure.
So a good sleep cycle is somewhere 10 to 10:30 at night, waking up at 6 in the morning. And the reason that you want to go to bed at that particular time is we've actually found in research that your body goes through a detox protocol somewhere around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night up until about 1 o'clock in the morning. You're starting to detox your liver. And so if you're setting up in front of a TV, watching the news, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen a lot of good things happening in the news right now. I don't,
No.
even if you're a Trump fan or if you're not a Trump fan, either way, you're not happy right now. Everybody's up in arms right now. So, watching things like that, sitting in front of TV, or just going to bed later. I mean, those types of things that can definitely put a damper on your sleep. So, a couple of simple things is making sure, and I've heard you talk about this on your tip of the day, is just getting plenty of water today, a day. Water is
Sure.
actually like it just hydrates the system. Absolutely, man. So you want to take, half of your body weight in ounces, go to bed at the same time every night. Make sure that when you do go to sleep that your room is completely dark. You want to try to get as much light out of your room as you can, because what's happening at night again is that's when your body is trying to it's healing itself basically, and you produce something called growth hormone at night, which is like a repair mechanism for your body. So quiet, dark, uh, same time to bed every night. Don't watch anything that can be negative before bed, or read anything that's real strenuous before bed. Don't talk to your spouse if you've been thinking about selling the house. That getting into the conversation like that before bedtime is probably not a good idea. Just simple little tips like that can go a long way. Now, as far as little kids, if you've got a little kid, just times like that, you just got to tough it out, man. It's unfortunately, little kids can do that to you. So just some good general tips, though, Daryl.
Yeah. Okay. And I couldn't agree more about the water. The water is such I call it the river of life. And I certainly didn't make up that term. I just know that when I started basically drinking half my weight in ounces, it was about 3 or 4 summers ago. Actually getting ready for a golf tournament in the middle of the summer, and it was typical 100 degrees every day, and man, it gave me that extra shot, and I was like, I should try this a year round, because correct me if I'm wrong, but when you go to sleep at night and you're not constantly sipping water like pretty much you're supposed to do all day, doesn't your body start to dehydrate at that point?
Oh, you definitely can. Yeah, you definitely can. And I see it's pretty common in our area too, because we do have a high humidity area, and people, that are out and about during the warmer temperatures especially, we don't realize how much body fluid that we lose, with the humidity and the high temperatures basically. So yeah, you definitely want to stay hydrated. And not only that, hydration, which I'm sure we'll get into here in just a little bit, as far as like discs and ligaments and things like that too. You want to keep your disc hydrated. You want to keep your ligaments hydrated. It keeps your liver flush to detoxify your system. And a lot of times even people that have headaches and stuff like that, just by drinking more water throughout the course of the day, sometimes you can get headaches to go away as well.
That I can see that being beneficial. So what would you say to a guy who maybe from time to time goes to sleep watching NBA TV?
It's all right to do that every now and then.
Not that I know any.
Yeah.
So what would you say to a guy? Not that I know anybody like that, but
absolutely, yeah.
But
it's okay every now and then. It's just, but you don't. You want to try to build those strong habits to where you are pretty well going to bed at the same time, no TV, getting up at the same time, those types of things. And over time that gives your body more of an ability to heal. And yeah, we've all got those times. This weekend, Friday night, I'm a big UK fan. UK's playing at, I don't think they play until 9:00 at night. Go Cats. But I'm going to be up, pretty late watching that game, I would imagine. And regardless of the outcome, I'm probably going to be pretty amped up, and it'll be hard to go to sleep after that game's over with.
Well, and then you got to listen to KSR, and you got to say, especially if we win. If we lose, I guess we can cry ourselves to sleep on.
That's right.
On Friday night. Well, we have a question.
Sure.
We have a question. Do you have any daily stretches that you recommend?
I think for most people, you can look up on YouTube these types of stretches. What I tell most of my patients, there's one called a cat-camel stretch, and basically it's where you get down on all fours and you're arching your back and then kind of collapsing your back and taking deep breaths in and out. You can go to YouTube and look up cat-camel stretches. That's just a basic way just to get your day started. Get some good circulation, get the muscles moving. And then we also, in our office, we most of our patients have what's called a wobble disc, which is basically like a little blow-up disc thing that you can set on, and they'll kind of shift around. We've got some exercises that we show them there. And again, those are things that you can find probably on YouTube, I would imagine. You could get that, pick up a wobble disc on Amazon for about $15. And what that does, Daryl, is actually your discs don't have a blood supply. They actually get their nutrition through an exchange called imbibition. And whenever you're moving, like with a cat-camel stretch or you're doing a wobble chair exercise, what you're actually doing is you're pumping those discs and you're keeping those discs healthy. And that can go a long way, for the construction worker or for the person that sits in front of a computer all day. If you're wanting more preventative type things, those are perfect exercises to do. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, speaking of sitting in front of the computer, I got something for you today, and I'm just going to show you what I'm doing here.
All right,
It's a,
yeah.
it's my bouncy ball chair, and my fiance got it for me for Christmas, and what my absolute favorite gift. Um, it really does change. I think number one, uh, it's hard to slouch and stay on this ball. So if your posture is not, if you don't keep your posture really good, then you could, you know, the best thing it's done for keep my back straight, my shoulders back, and good posture, and then it gives you a little movement, because guys, I don't, especially trial lawyers like myself, we're behind the computer a lot. We're typing, documents. We're talking to
Absolutely.
clients, and it's so, I know in the old days, uh, I'm sitting there on the phone in one hand and the feet up on the desk in the other hand, slouched and everything. This just gives me energy all day. So
Awesome.
who better to share it with than Dr. Travis?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, and another little thing that I like now that they have out is the I think they call it the Very Desk, which is a desk that you can actually raise up so you can use it standing or seated. And I know those aren't cheap, but at the same time, it gives you that option to stand up for a little bit, which they say chronic sitting now in a lot of the studies that were coming out is actually just as bad for you as smoking. So, if you are somebody that's sitting at your desk for prolonged periods of time, you want to make sure that you're getting up every 30 to 45 minutes just to move around and, rehydrate those discs, get some blood flowing again.
Okay, we've got another question, Doc. What's the best way to find a good and experienced chiropractor in our hometown? And these are for people that the particular person asking this does not live in our town. What questions should they ask prospective
Well,
chiropractor?
I think the first thing is a lot of our business just comes from referrals. Is find somebody in your office maybe that you work with, or maybe on the soccer team that your kids play with. And just ask them. Who have you seen? Did you have a good experience? Because I do think that referrals are typically some of the best form of advertising that a person can get. The second thing is just to call the office and just ask them. There's generally two types of chiropractors. There's what's called pain relief chiropractic, which those are the people, you go in and you get a couple of treatments, and then there's what's called corrective chiropractic, which generally those are longer term care plans. They're more focused on chronic problems that somebody's been having for a long time. If they've got radiculopathy where they get numbness or tingling in their hands, those are chiropractors that are trying to restructure the neck completely to get rid of that. And that may take a longer period of time. So, just ask around with what your problem is, and just see if somebody's dealt with that, had that same problem and been to somebody that they've had a good experience with is where I would get started. And if not, we can always call our office. I mean, we've got a system that we use too, to where we look up a zip code. We deal with a lot of people out of town that will, they'll call the office and say, hey man, I need somebody in this area, and we'll be glad to look those up for you. So yeah, you can send me your zip code
Nice,
too, and we'll be glad to help you out with that as well.
nice. It's kind of, a lot the same way referrals work with personal injury attorneys. We run in the same circles, go to the same seminars, same national conferences. So, and the other day I had a buddy from South Carolina that referred me a case, or at least a lead. So I think that's a great idea. You're
Absolutely.
talking about radiculopathy, and I know what it means now. I don't think I can give as good a definition as you. Tell us, because this is something, correct me if I'm wrong, that so many people with back and neck pain get. They get that radiculopathy.
Absolutely.
What does it
So
mean in doctor's term?
So basically, a radiculopathy is often one of the most common things it's often mistaken with is carpal tunnel. And what radiculopathy is we've got nerve roots that exit the spine. They go into the shoulder and they run all the way down into the hands and help our hands to move and grasp things. And a lot of times what can happen is there can be some type of irritation in the nerve root up in the neck area. And basically what that does, when the nerve root in the neck gets irritated, it can send what's called referred pains, meaning numbness or tingling or shooting pain all the way down into the arms and hands. Now, typically those types of things can come from, muscles that have either, been irritated, maybe they're putting pressure on the nerve, maybe there's a ligament, a lot of inflammation, disc bulge, disc herniations. Those are typically things that can cause those radicular pains. Carpal tunnel would be one of the ones from the neck. Now the low back, the common term is sciatica. A lot of people hear and they have sciatica problems. And again, 90% of the time, it's something that's happening with the disc. In my opinion, I see a lot of people that come in with disc bulges or disc herniations, and then typically the nerve roots will get inflamed, the muscles start to spasm, and a good rule of thumb to determine how serious the problem is. Now, this isn't an absolute science, but a lot of times what we as doctors do is we'll ask the patient, if it's sciatica, does it go past the knee? If it goes past the knee, that's typically a more serious problem. If it's not going past the knee, it's something usually that can be dealt with a little bit easier. Now, that's not all the time, but again, that's just a good general rule of thumb. So that's basically what a radiculopathy is. It's just something irritated near the spine, the nerve roots that are exiting the spine, that's sending some type of symptom down the arm or the leg, basically.
Okay. We see this in a lot of, we hear that term in a lot of the injury and accident cases that I handle, radiculopathy, sciatica. What are, in the world I live in, personal injury law, my job as a personal injury attorney is to get the injury victim compensated for all the harms and losses that they suffered through no account of their own. And we try to get their medical bills paid. We try to get them paid for pain and suffering and just a general loss of, work time and wages and general loss of enjoyment of life. And so when you see a standard car crash, like a T-bone, like a rear end crash or something like that, what are the most common conditions that you as a doctor see from those type patients?
Well, that's a really great question. And one of the problems is a lot of times when people are injured in an auto accident, they're whether it's a rear ending or a T-bone, like what you say, they'll go to the emergency room and they will get X-rays or CTs, and the emergency room doctor says, you basically got a sprain strain. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is when you have a whiplash injury, there's actually 3 stages that you go through with that injury. The first stage is the inflammatory stage, and that can typically last about 72 hours. And so what happens is when somebody reports to the emergency room, things are swollen. Like if you twist your ankle, most of us have played sports or been around sports, and when you twist an ankle, immediately what that ankle does is it swells up to about the size of a softball. That same thing is happening to your neck and your low back. And what happens is you immediately lose range of motion. Your body just becomes on lockdown, basically. So when they're at the hospital and they're doing films on them, a lot of times they'll miss a lot of underlying things that are going on with the spine and the ligaments because the inflammatory stage is in place. So what we actually do in our office is we, after they have been to the ER and they come in and they get looked at, is we like to do what's called flexion extension x-rays. And the reason that you'll do that is you want to make sure that the ligaments and the tendons, everything's intact, particularly the ligaments of the spine, because the ligaments are what actually hold the spine in place. And basically, when somebody's in a whiplash injury, they're getting nailed with about anywhere from 6 Gs up to sometimes 12 Gs, which means 12 times their body weight when in a third of a second, basically, is that much pressure is being put in there, and they end up with ligament damage. And when you do the flexion extension views, you can actually see where that ligament damage is. Many people that they go to the ER, they get prescribed pain medication, and they say, go back to the doctor. Many of them that don't get treated properly, 50% of them, over 50% of them actually is what the studies say, they have long-term damage from those injuries. And one of the things in particular that is really, really scary, in fact, is with a T-bone injury, somebody that's been hit from the side. At the very top, you've got something at the very first bone of your neck. There's a ligament up there called the alar ligament. that attaches to the second bone in the spine. When you get hit from the side, if you get T-bone in there, there's actually some studies that are showing that if somebody has alar ligament damage, that it actually can increase their risk of stroke later on in life, because you have your carotid arteries that are actually going up through the spine. So I can't stress the importance, if you've been injured in a car accident, how important it is to get your spine properly looked at, not just going to the ER, but by somebody that's been specially trained, like myself, that can go in and knows exactly what they're looking for, because that's going to help determine how well you're going to be 10, 15 years from now, basically, And, as far as what you do as well, too, Daryl, I mean, most people, in this area, I've ran into so many people that I've tried to say, hey, you need good representation, and they say, well, I just don't want to sue, maybe they're Christian people and they feel like it's against their, but what they're not realizing is they're thinking about just the now. They're not thinking about what's going to happen later. And, I mean, medical expenses, as you and I both know, can add up very quickly. Everybody in the state of Kentucky, we get $10,000 worth of, this personal injury protection care, but a lot of people blow through that in no time. And if you end up having to have a spinal surgery, some people are having to pay $60,000, $80,000, out of pocket for these types of things,
more.
because or more even for that. I mean, that's just a minimal thing there. So, I can't stress. Again, this is where you and I come into play. I can't stress the importance of making sure that you're properly examined, properly diagnosed, and represented properly by an attorney that knows, exactly how to work these cases and how to deal with these insurance companies to make sure that somebody gets reimbursed properly, so that if they do run into that, they need that future care even, then they've got the money available for that. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
It does. And, what we try to do is all a civil claim or civil lawsuit is shifting the burden from the person who was injured to the person who was responsible. So it's
Absolutely.
all about, sometimes if those people won't accept responsibility, my job is to come and force them to accept and maximize the value of their case. But I think that's very fast, especially the stat you were giving us, 50% are not treated properly, or 50% of the time, the patients are not treated properly and they have symptoms down the road.
Absolutely.
I got another question. I just got a text on this one, and I tried to write it down as fast. We didn't talk about your schooling and stuff, about your chiropractic training and everything. What would be how would chiropractic doctor's treatment to a medical doctor's treatment, or not treatment, but their
their education?
What type of schooling does each go through?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, it's pretty similar for the most part. What happens is in the very beginning, I had to go through a cadaver lab. We did, we had human bodies that we actually dissected, and we had to learn every muscle and nerve and blood vessel, and we had to take all these anatomy and physiology classes. And so basically the training is pretty much the same up until we get to neurology. We get quite a bit more neurology than the average medical doctor, because we're dealing directly with the nervous system, basically. And where we get more neurology, they're getting more pathology, and they're getting more pharmacology, because we obviously, as a chiropractor, we don't deal with medication. We deal with the nervous system, where they're dealing with more, pharmaceuticals. And so they deal with the pharmacodynamics, how does the drug affect the body? What are the drugs that are out there? I know I had a friend in medical school, they had to learn the top 100 drugs that are most commonly prescribed, And so it's very similar up until toward the end, we get more specific into what we do at that point. So I think people would be surprised at the level of education that we have. Actually, it's a standard 4-year school, just like med school is 4 years, chiropractic school is basically 4 years, where the only thing is typically medical doctors will go do a residency. A lot of chiropractors will go out and they'll do what's called an associateship with another practitioner. And then after that, some of them stay with that particular doctor. They'll go out and open their own practices. So it is very, very similar as far as education goes.
lots and lots of education, which back, to me would have not have been interesting and fascinating when I was younger, and now really fascinates me. I love learning
Absolutely.
new stuff about the human body because, the one thing they don't really teach us too well, other than your food groups and stuff like that, get some exercise, drink a little bit of water and stuff. We don't really learn about this body of ours or this brain of ours or this heart of ours. And I think any types of training that we could give young people ahead of time, I find myself with my nieces and nephews, I'm more or less like shaming them for eating too much sugar or not drinking enough water, too many sodas, that kind of stuff. And I know it doesn't work. So I would
Yeah.
advise anybody out there not to do what I did. But yeah, if they could get some more training in high school and college, and I think that would be very interesting. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
what I got a question for you, and it's something you hear a lot of times in car wrecks. You see it in civil trials. You hear people talking about it. And I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what they're talking about. I know I didn't for a long time. What is a whiplash? What does the term whiplash mean?
Whiplash. That's a great question, and actually, what the technical term for whiplash is now is it's called a CAD disorder, and CAD stands for cervical acceleration deceleration syndrome. So, what basically happens if somebody is in a if they're in a car and they get rear-ended, again, it happens in about 1/3 of a second. You get as much force depending on how fast that car is, the mass of that car behind you, the mass of your car. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But basically what happens is there's a huge amount of force that is just thrust into the spine at one time. And during that time, your head weighs about 12 to 15 pounds on average, which is basically the size of a bowling ball. And then you've got your trunk, which is the majority of your body weight. Well, your neck is basically this small connection between your head and your body. So what happens is when I get hit from behind, immediately what happens is my body begins to go forward and my body begins to go up at the same time as my head goes back. I go up, forward, and back, and then I'm rapidly thrown forward. My head is thrown forward. So it's almost like you create this shearing motion because of the way that the head, it's thrust forward and backwards so quickly. And then that's where the ligament damage it comes in oftentimes, and that just creates a whole gamut of problems for people over time. But it's that just sudden impact of force thrown into the spine, and the body just cannot accept it. It'd be like, I'll give you the example. If I tap on a window, tap, 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 and all of a sudden I just take a bat and I just bam, one quick thrust with it, that's the equivalent of what's happening in a car wreck. If I take that bat and just real hard thrust it, it shatters the glass. Well, it's basically like the glass has been shattered in my neck, basically. And like I said, 50% of people suffer long term with these types of things, and they don't even realize it because of how traumatic the damage is in there. What happens a lot of times though too is I often like to paint this picture with my patients. If you take a rope swing, most of us have been to the lake and we have a rope swing, and we're swinging on this rope swing. Well, a rope is basically a bunch of other smaller ropes just kind of twirled together to give it strength. Well, each one of those little ropes is gradually begin to break. And that's basically what happens when you're in a car accident is you've severed several of those smaller ropes, and you keep swinging on that rope over time, and gradually those smaller ropes are beginning to break until finally that last kid gets on the rope and he tries to swing out and the rope completely breaks. That's what happens to your ligaments basically in a whiplash injury over time. So extremely important to get that checked out.
That's a great analogy, and that's a great way to kind of put that into context. Heck, I may steal that from you, Doc, and use it maybe in my next trial.
Absolutely.
Do you see, and I think, I think about the NFL and the lawsuits pending and the 30-30 documentaries on players that played in the NFL, your Jim McMahons and people like that. And they've either got brain damage or they're sitting, a couple of them were sitting around waiting for the day they were going to get brain damage because they always compare the NFL as like having, some 30 to 40 car wrecks per game. and then you
Yeah.
multiply that over the course of 5 to 10 years, and you can see. Do you see many people um, who have brain damage or brain injuries from car wrecks?
Yeah, we do actually. And what happens is, again, you've got such a rapid amount of force, and your brain is just this thing basically that's floating inside of your skull, surrounded by fluid. And when you have that rapid acceleration, deceleration, there's something called axonal shearing that takes place. And basically, axons are basically like cells in our body. Axons are kind of the basic building blocks of the brain. And when you have an injury like that, it immediately causes inflammation and damage to the brain. And a lot of times people, they'll have, loss of memory. They'll have extreme fatigue. Maybe they'll get headaches real easily. They'll have visual disturbances. There's a whole gamut of symptoms that go on from that, and those are things that can be really tricky to treat, and sometimes people don't come back from those. Basically, there can be a lot of long-term damage from those. So boxers are a great example of that. People that are in boxing matches, I mean, that's
Yes.
another sport that they're taking a lot of jabs to the head, and man, those are terrible brain injuries that are going to cause long-term repercussions for those guys.
Yeah, and in some cases, uh, maybe Parkinson's disease, like Ali had. All your great heavyweights, it seems like when they got in their mid 60s to 70s, they either died or they couldn't speak.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, what would you if somebody comes into you and says they have they can't remember anything, whatever? What course of treatment would you recommend for them?
I tend to work in conjunction with medical doctors. Some people,
Uh-huh.
chiropractors, they're not, pro medicine. I'm definitely pro medicine. I mean, I definitely think there's a time and place for it. I think one of the first thing is just getting proper imaging on a person, just to see the extent of the damage. There's a lot of new technology that's coming out now. We've got functional MRIs, which can actually show different parts of the brain and how well the brain is functioning. And you can send patients out to check different areas of the brain specifically to see how they're doing, because as you and I both know, there's different areas of the brain control different functions in the body, and those things
Sure.
can be an indicator of how well that person's going to do. But as far as healing goes, the good thing about our brain is that we used to think that our brain and nervous system, that it would not heal, that the brain nervous system does not regenerate. We're starting to learn now that there is a regeneration process that takes place, but it's a very slow process. And one of the best ways to support the regeneration of nerves, or have your brain where you can become more focused and start to get some of that memory and your focus back, is to increase your good dietary fats, is what they're showing. So things like coconut oil, fish oil, olive oil, those are basic building blocks that we can consume on a daily basis that are going to help our body to regenerate and start to get back to where it needs to be again. And then also cutting out inflammatory foods, like your rancid oils. And, let's just take McDonald's French fries, for example. A lot of people don't realize it,
Oh, yeah.
but vegetable oil has a half-life of 51 days in your body. So what happens is when you go, now you're smiling, I hope I didn't just bust you if you went and got a Big Mac or something for lunch, but anyway.
No.
But what happens is when you ingest vegetable oil into your body, you have a half-life of 51 days, which means it takes 102 days to get rid of the negative effects of that rancid oil that you put in your body, which we've shown can cause, lots of inflammation. And inflammation is just a trigger word for disease, basically, in your body. Every disease in your body, one of the triggers for it is inflammation over time. So, yeah, we want to make sure we're eating plenty of good fats to regenerate.
Well, along the same lines, because you see this with older people, not naming anyone in particular, but how do you deal with inflammation? Inflammation in your head, inflammation in your joints. What's the best?
Yeah, great question again. And I think the first thing is
a way to.
Yeah, I lost you a little bit there, but I think I got the premise of your question. So the first thing that we have to do is if we look at a plant, if somebody, it's getting the proper amount of sunlight, it's got the proper soil, but somebody's dumping kerosene into the soil, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to remove the kerosene that's going into that oil. And so first off is we got to look at what we're putting in our bodies on a daily basis. Are we consuming a diet that's high in sugar and processed foods? Are we working in an environment where maybe there's a lot of toxicity involved? A lot of people don't realize it, but 60% of the things that you put on your skin are actually absorbed into your body. So women that wear a lot of cosmetics and maybe a lot of hair dyes and deodorants with excessive amounts of aluminum in them, all those things become part of what's called your toxic load, and your body just can't clear it all out. So what that does is that creates a lot of inflammation. So you got to first look at what's going in your body, and you've got to make the changes in order to get that out of there. And then, like I said, the natural anti-inflammatory foods, like the Mediterranean style diets, are really good because they focus in on like the olive oils, and they're pretty low carbohydrate diets. Some people now are using what's called intermittent fasting, where basically they won't eat until noon. They'll eat from about noon until 8 o'clock at night, and that just lets their digestive system reset. It kind of lets that slow down, and puts less stress on that, less stress on the liver, so the liver can have time to properly detox the body and get rid of things. So there's a whole gamut of things that you need to do in order to properly detox the body, get inflammation out of it. But again, almost every disease, including cancer, is a chronic inflammatory state that has just been there for so long that finally the body says, I give up, and that's when we end up with a really bad situation. So
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you say is something I always like to tell people, at least tell them, the number one way to prevent disease, inflammation, sickness is to stop the poisoning.
You're exactly right.
Stop the things like, Diet Cokes and, you have one, I let myself have one or two a week. I use it more as a dessert or a treat or something like that. But it's just, like you said, the good diets, the low carb and vegetables and stuff
Absolutely.
like that.
And the good news
we do have another question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. The good news is
I was going to say the really cool thing now is a lot of people, they're putting so much they're just putting so much emphasis on genetics, and what people are saying is well, my dad had cancer, my mom had cancer, therefore I'm just pre-programmed for cancer. But what a lot of people need to do is we've got to go out and we've got to look into something called, a lot of things now coming out are called epigenetics. And what epigenetics is just basically above the genetic code. And what we're learning is that, yeah, there's people that have a higher potential for disease, that have a higher potential for cancer. But what happens is that those genes still have to express themselves. They still have to be turned on. And basically how they're turning on is things that we're putting in our bodies, things that we're coming into contact with. And, if you can change the things that you come into contact with, again, basically you can allow those genes to never express themselves. And the research actually backs me up on this, is somewhere between, at the low end, 70% to 95% of the things that happen to us are a result of our choices that we've made over time. So again, we're not just a victim of our genes. The power goes back to us to make the proper choices. And then, Lord willing, we'll just die of something long term. Our bodies are programmed to live up to 120 years. We shouldn't be dying of cancer, at 40 years old or 50 years old, like some, you hear about some people, nowadays. So power is back to you just with your proper choices, over time.
And I believe that, Doc. I can't say that I always believe that, but I do now, and I try to do the things. You talk about the fast. I know I have several friends that tell me about the benefit of fasting, just kind of monitoring for a few days, and like you said, letting their digestive reset. I can't really do that. Because I tend to get too hungry. What I can do, I did it, Monday and Tuesday this week, is I can go and just eat smooth, green smoothies, cucumbers, kale, spinach in the morning. I can do just, you can stop by Cracker Barrel and get a vegetable plate for $7.95, I think, and you can have it in
Yeah,
like 5 minutes. So
absolutely.
I'll eat one of those and some kind of salad for dinner. Just give myself a couple of days to cleanse with. I'll
Yeah.
go, I'll drink more water and stuff like that. We do got another
Okay. Yeah,
question
go ahead.
from an attorney. Can you comment as to the reasons why ligament injury can cause more long-term problems for patients as compared to a broken bone?
That's a
And
great
I know
question.
as a basketball coach, so many sprained ankles over 17 years, and we're always like, after a sprained ankle, the the kid or the parent or somebody will come back. It would have been better if he'd have just broken it.
Right.
So I think that's a great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons why that a ligament is so much worse off, to have than a bone injury, is because ligaments have a poor blood supply. And it's actually the blood in the body. When the body has an injury, the blood is what carries all those inflammatory mediators, and it carries all the healing factors into the area in order to repair that damaged tissue. So when I have ligament damage, I don't get that proper blood supply. Like, for instance, with a disc injury, a lot of people don't realize a disc is just basically just a bunch of ligaments kind of stuck together between the bones. They have a terrible blood supply. And so that's, again, when you have a disc injury like that, it takes a tremendous amount of time for those to heal, and they never heal properly for that reason, is because they don't get the proper blood supply. So like you say, as a basketball coach, I mean, the bones, I mean, there's good blood supply there. The bone regenerates itself pretty readily, and the bone can heal up properly over time. And actually, what's crazy about it is actually bone, when it does get damaged, it's actually stronger than it was before it was damaged. And that's a concept called Wolff's
I've
Law.
heard that.
Yep, that's actually a concept called Wolff's Law. And I'll give you an example of Wolff's Law. You look into you mentioned, sports earlier, NFL guys, you see these guys out there that are 5'10", 185 pounds. I'm 5'10", I'm about 175, 80 pounds, but if you put me on an NFL field and I get hit one or two times, they're going to break me in half. And it's because of that constant force that they're getting. When they get hit, what happens is every time that they've been hit over time, their bone has a reaction and it builds more bone to make itself stronger. That's called Wolff's Law. And as a result of that, their bones are
Interesting.
stronger and they can tolerate those higher hits. If you take a NASA astronaut, for example, too, NASA astronauts, whenever they're in space, they have to do exercise every day, because if they don't do exercise every day, what happens is they develop osteopenia or brittle bone. They start to get brittle bones and lose the bone density. So they have to perform really intense exercises in outer space just to keep their bone density up. So bone is better to have an injury with your bone than ligament. So that's a really good question.
Okay. Doc, I've still got half my notepad left. We're going to have to invite you back for another time. I want to be respectful of your time today, because there's so many more things I want to talk about.
Okay. All right, man.
Disc
Yeah.
bulge, disc herniation, allergies, and everything. But let's finish up with a little personal stuff. Tell us a little bit about your family. You have a beautiful family. Love seeing your pictures on Facebook. And
I
tell us a little
appreciate
bit
that.
about your wife and.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I met my wife years ago. Actually, it's kind of funny. When you live in a small town, I actually dated one of her best friends, and the best friend actually a couple years later actually fixed us up. So that's the when you live in a small pond, you just never know how things are going to work
Sure,
out. But
sure.
we've been married since 2001, and we've got 3 kids now. I've got 2 girls, 8 and 10. Got a little boy named Carson. He's 3, and we spend most of the time, when I'm not in the office practicing, we are chasing those kids around the house or doing something with them periodically. So, yeah, we've got a good family, man.
And I will tell a story maybe next broadcast when I get her permission. But your wife was involved in one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen at a golf driving range. And I and I may have told you this one before, but I definitely want to get her permission and her friends' permission to ever tell that story. Uh,
Okay.
very lots of fun. Hey Doc, where'd you go to? chiropractic school at?
I went to Logan College in St. Louis, and funny story, we were actually looking at chiropractic colleges, and they'd actually just opened one down outside of Daytona Beach, and I told my wife this before we had kids. I said, "Hey, let's move down to Florida and go to school, live on the beach, and we'll have some fun. We'll get some beach time." And she really, she loves the town. She never wanted to leave the town to begin with, and she said, "No," she said, "I want you to find the closest school that you can and get the degree right there, and then that way I can travel home back and forth on the weekend." It actually worked out better. Actually, the school that I went to was actually a lot better school than the one that had just opened, and had a phenomenal experience there. Met a lot of good people, and again, it was outside of St. Louis, a little town called Chesterfield, about 3.5 hours, 3 hours 15 minutes away, and it's good to be able to come home and hang out and spend summers with the family and that sort of thing. So good experience, man.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Now, on the flip side, I was accepted to a school pretty close to home, and I was also accepted to a school in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which was the Nova Southeastern Shepherd Broad Law Center. And
Nice.
I chose to go the Florida route. And I always told people, I said, these Florida schools, they've got to have students too. And so I was happy to help them out for 3 years, and it was 3 of the best years of my life. But nothing beats returning home to where you're from and where there's friendly faces and family and stuff like that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
well, Doc, we're going to wrap it up. Like I said, I know you did well. I tell you what, I got one last thing I've got to ask you about today. Give me and tell our viewers, what is a day in the life of a chiropractor? What is a day in the life? What routines do you do in a single day? I know you and I were talking before we came on. You did a little workout before we went on the air.
Absolutely.
And
you gotta get it in, man.
A lot of my attorney friends, and they actually do go running during lunch, and I'm always jealous and envious of that. I'm more of a nighttime runner, but give us a day in the life of Dr. Michael Travis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not one of these guys that gets up at 4:30 in the morning, and but I do normally wake up around 6:30 in the morning. I help with the kids. Usually I fix breakfast. I take my kids to school. My wife helps get the kids ready, dressed, and whatnot. Usually, though, what I try to do is when I wake up, in my closet, I've got a list. I've got a bulletin board in my closet that's got a list of scripture verses on it. And I try to go in and at least try to start my day off right. I'll go in there and read a couple of those verses, and then maybe spend about 5 minutes or so just in prayer about the day. Just trying to get my head right and make sure that I'm not about me, that I'm putting me off, and I'm thinking about the people around me instead. So drop the kids off, get to the office, and one of the things that I love about our office is, we're a Christian-based office. We do what's called a huddle before we get our day started, where we actually read a devotional. I'll read one, and there's certain days that my staff reads one. We actually pray before we get started.
That's fantastic.
And the reason that we do that again is because, when we come into practice, really a good practice is really, it's not about you, it's about the people that you're serving. And I always tell my kids when I go to my office, it's not really work. I don't really work. I help people. And I tell them, if you go in with the mindset of helping people and truly serving the people around you, you're going to be successful no matter what you do. If that's collecting trash, I help people, clean up their garbage cans and make their yard, or if you're a chiropractor like myself. So we have a huddle. We see our patients, come home about 11:30, 12. I usually do a quick workout. I've got a little home gym here in my office, and I've got a treadmill and some weights and stuff. I try to alternate between weights and cardio.
Nice.
So usually 5 days a week, I'm doing either weights or cardio. We go back, have another meeting, huddle time, quick devotion. Look at the schedule, and then we work until about 6 o'clock at night. And then honestly, when I get home, man, I just try to shut it down. I try to really turn the cell phone off and just make sure that I'm engaged with my kids and that I'm there to, taking care of my wife and trying to, just spend some good quality time with them. And I usually try to go to bed, 10:30 every night, like I was talking about earlier with you on the sleep thing. So that's kind of my basic routine throughout the day, and it works for me. It definitely it's worked for me over time.
that's very fascinating and very, in my opinion, very awesome. And I think it's great, and it says a lot about you to have that kind of relationship, as the leader of your office, and something we can all learn for. I think probably myself, I think I do a good little routine while I'm at home. I just kind of use the time that I have when I'm showering and walking around the house and stuff. And I always, before I walk out the door, I try to say, today, my goal today is to celebrate and serve a king,
Yep.
the king
There you
being
go.
the Lord Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And in the process, let me help as many of my clients change their lives forever.
Absolutely.
And then I'll flip a coin. It's either Bidwell Show and KSR, or it's K-Love for me. And I've got about a 15 to 20-minute commute. So,
Yeah, there you go, man.
last question.
Yep.
Last question. You're talking, I think it's important what you said, shutting it down. And I need to learn that. I tend to carry it with me. Even when I'm laying in bed, I'm thinking, about this case and about that case. And did we get this, but what other keys would you say to somebody out there, even not, and I'm not just talking about us adults, what would you say to children even about being able to shut it down at night and really kind of release that day and all that, kind of turn off your brain?
I think you made a good point, and it's we spend a lot of times, what can happen to a person is if they come home and they're worried about their work, and they're not spending quality time with their family, what happens is then they're going to start having family issues, and now you're at work worried about the family, and then you're at home worried about the work. And really, it's just learning how to be present time. You want to exuberate that present time consciousness with wherever you are. And you can't. What I've had to deal with is I can't change my past. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I do know what the present. I'm in the present, and I'm going to make the best of the situation that I'm in right now. I'm going to try to be present with everybody that I come into contact with, and so that's just kind of been my mindset. That I try to operate on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I don't think I think you hit it all on the head when you said the present, or the precious present. I know one of my favorite past time great coaches, and I've read everything that John Calipari has ever written. I've read everything that Rick Pitino, and Rick Pitino starts every year talking about a book called The Precious Present.
Yep.
And what that means is it's not only a present, it is the present, meaning
Absolutely.
this moment right now. And I think that's just great advice to give. Once the work day is done, is to give your wife, your fiance, your family, give whoever you're interacting with your presence, and not being still focused at the office, or because, like you said, if you do neglect that part of your life, then there's going to be a day where you're going to deal with all that while you're at work. And
yeah,
I think that's great
right.
advice.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Doc, we're gonna get out of here today. I'm gonna spend about 15 minutes getting some stuff ready for next time, because there's a bunch of stuff on my list and a bunch of stuff I've been thinking about, and people have been questions they've been asking. So we can definitely come back and do part 2. And
okay.
Again, so anybody out there, if you want to hear more from Dr. Travis, where would they go? Website?
You can go to our Facebook page, look under Total Health Chiropractic. Now, we're in Benton, Kentucky. Just make sure you choose. There are some Total Healths around the nation. There's one up north, but make sure that you just go to the one in Benton, Kentucky. And we're constantly posting things. I try to do a daily, video myself, and just put some good health tips out there. And, if anybody needs any help and they do run into a problem, a whiplash injury or headaches or whatever that is, feel free to call our office, and we're glad to get you looked at. If you're listening and you're in another area, feel free to look us up, and we can find somebody for you. Because again, there are good doctors and there's not so good doctors out there. And typically we know some of the things to look for based upon the techniques and the things that they do. So we can help you with that as well too. Like I said earlier, we're just here to serve, man. That's, that's what we're here for, and it's just want to serve as many people as we can, basically. So, yep, that's where they can find us.
Great. Total Health Chiropractic, Benton, Kentucky. Dr. Michael Travis, thanks a bunch. And we will do part 2 down the road. We'll get this on the schedule. And like I said, we'll start working on my notes. Everybody out there, thanks so much for spending an hour or so with us. I would like to ask the people who view, the weekly show, tell us, give us some suggestions on some guests you might want to hear from, some topics you might want to hear from. And, let us know if this time is a good time, or would you rather do it during lunch or at 4 o'clock? Probably won't be doing any nighttime sessions anytime soon. But again, like Dr. Travis said, we're here to serve, and I want to thank him again. And everybody
Absolutely.
go
Thank
out,
you.
have a great rest of the week. For a lot of us, it's about getting fired up for Friday night, and we got to take down those UCLA Bruins and go Cats.
That's right, buddy. Thanks, Daryl.
All right, buddy.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye.